So our olfactory tract begins from olfactory epithelium in the roof of the nose. From there, this thin film of mucus is embedded with these receptor cells and other supporting and basal cells. So, broadly speaking, this whole area represents olfactory epithelium embedded with this red color is representing olfactory receptor cells or peripheral neurons. It has two process, central process and peripheral process. That peripheral process is having this terminal button or expansion of the neuron axon. Then it is also having hair like processes called cilia. So terminal expansion with cilia. These cilia are embedded with the hair cells. uh, at the tip of these cells there is hair like processes called cilia. So all these are receiving the sensation of olfaction or smell. Then two types of cell, basal cell and supporting cell. They will act as a stem cell and they will give rise to new olfactory neurons whenever there is damage or regeneration. So this collection of this whole cellular structure is your olfactory epithelium. For the production of mucus, there is Bowman's gland, which are modified mucus glands. They will secrete mucus and it will overlie the film here. And then central process of these olfactory neurons, they will pass through cribriform plate of ethmoid bone. Remember roof of the nose. Through this cribriform plate, the central processes of these olfactory neurons will pass and they will relay in the olfactory bulb. So this whole area represents olfactory bulb. Okay. uh, Now olfactory bulb is divided in two parts, that is cortex and medulla. In the cortex there is globular structure called glomeruli. This is known as olfactory glomerulus. The word glomerulus you can find in the cerebellum also, in the olfactory bulb, and then in kidney also there is Bowman's capsule and the glomerulus. So the word glomerulus suggests something funnel like or something filtering. So from here this olfactory bipolar neuron cell is ending, it is synapsing, and second order neuron starts. So your first order neuron is olfactory neuron and second order neuron starts from the glomerulus. So basically there are four types of cells: mitral cells, granule cells, tufted cells and stellate cells. Again, periglomerular cells or granule cells, mitral cells, tufted cells here, and satellite cell or stellate cell. These cells are second order neuron which are connecting this first order neuron. After this glomerulus they are connecting to olfactory cortex. So this collection of these second order neurons central process is terminating in olfactory tract. Somewhere here there will be again a synapse, that is your anterior olfactory nucleus. So from the olfactory tract the fibers will pass from the anterior olfactory nucleus and then they will divide in two, medial and lateral olfactory stria. Olfactory tract divides in medial and lateral olfactory stria. This diagram represents oblique basal inferior view. You can see this is left inferolateral view of right sided cerebral hemisphere. So this is right cerebral hemisphere, You are observing it from the inferolateral side. Okay, so this is right half, this is right sided olfactory system. Medial stria is terminating around anterior commissure. Okay, there will be diagonal band of Broca. It is a part of limbic system. So we will discuss this in later on. Principal group is terminating in lateral olfactory stria. Main olfactory tract, main fibers, most of the fibers, they are terminating in lateral olfactory stria. In between these two stria there is one trigone, that is called olfactory trigone, this triangular area. In the floor of this trigone there is anterior perforated substance. Okay, it is sheet of white matter which is perforated by capillaries, blood vessels. So this is anterior perforated substance. Lateral olfactory stria, the fibers, they are terminating in this cortical area. This area is known as uncus. It is U-shaped area of limbic system. Okay, lateral to this area, uncus, okay, that is known as entorhinal area. So medially there is uncus and more laterally there is entorhinal area. These are the parts of limbic system again. So this number 1 and number 2 is representing cerebral cortical area, which is primary olfactory cortex number 1, and 2 is secondary olfactory cortex. Again, what is primary olfactory cortex? It is part of cerebral cortical area between anterior perforated substance and uncus. This area is primary olfactory area, where your olfactory tract and lateral olfactory stria is terminating. Here the neurons are relayed, and further neurons, they are connected to this entorhinal area. It is part of uncus and anterior part of this parahippocampal gyrus. This whole large structure is known as parahippocampal gyrus of the brain. And anterior part of this parahippocampal gyrus, here it is covering uncus. That part is known as secondary olfactory cortex. It means secondary olfactory cortex is made up of entorhinal area and lateral part of uncus. So here medial stria is related to this septum pellucidum. This is called lamina terminalis, and anterior to this we will have septal area and subcallosal area. Callosal sulcus is lying here, so subcallosal area and septal area, these are the parts of limbic system. So with this much of background, we will proceed further. So we have seen that there is olfactory epithelium, nerves, bulb, tract, stria and cortical area. These are the two words for animals, macrosomatic and microsomatic. Human beings, they have less capacity of smell sensation, so they are known as microsomatic. All vertebrates, higher vertebrates, they are microsomatic, and lower vertebrates, they are having higher sense of smell, they are called macrosomatic. Highly developed olfactory capacities. The olfactory neuron cells or receptor cells, it is the only neurons which are exposed to the surface of the body. No other neurons in the body, they are directly exposed to the air except olfactory neurons. So another term used for them is olfactory neuroepithelium or they are called neuroblast. So whenever a cell is in the blast form, it is precursor form. They have properties of stem cell and they have ability to regenerate and divide. So it is olfactory neuroblast, which are acting as olfactory neuronal cells. So they have capacity of regenerating. They are largely unmyelinated, okay, and they can regenerate when there is damage. So naturally there can be tumor also if they have capacity of regeneration. Sometimes there is intermediate olfactory stria present. So between lateral and medial olfactory stria, there is intermediate stria which is ending in the olfactory tubercle. Where exactly? Between this medial and lateral stria, here there is olfactory intermediate stria. It will terminate in olfactory tubercle. Most of the neurons, they will terminate in lateral stria and primary olfactory cortex. Tufted cells, axons. We have seen 4 types of cells in the olfactory bulb cortex. Out of them, tufted cells, they are sending their axons to the opposite olfactory bulb. The fibers will run through the medial olfactory stria. It will cross the midline via anterior commissure and they will synapse with the opposite olfactory bulb cortex. So you have seen that the second order neurons directly reach the cortex without relay in the thalamic nuclei. They don't relay, they directly reach the cortex. So when you learn cerebral cortical area, you will see that it is representing area number 28 in Brodmann's classification. Base of frontal lobe. Another part, we have seen that base of frontal cortex is known as orbitofrontal cortex. It is also acting as a secondary olfactory cortex. And the 2 parts, that is amygdala and hippocampus, they are part of limbic system. They are involved in the Papez circuit and therefore they are involved in the processing of memory. So we will learn them again in memory formation. Now there is a secondary connection of the olfactory neurons with the dorsal nucleus of vagus. We have seen in functional components this dorsal nucleus of vagus. It is related with the smell and taste both. So smell fibers will travel from the uncus via this medial forebrain bundle and then they will connect with the dorsal nucleus of vagus. Also they will connect with the superior and inferior salivatory nuclei. That is the reason of salivation in the mouth by good sense of smell of good food or tasty food. Similarly, there is inhibition of salivation upon bad odor or false odor. And so it will increase or decrease salivation as well as gastric secretion according to food and its likeliness. Clinical anatomy. Neuron tumor in the olfactory neuron. It is a meningioma in the floor of anterior cranial fossa. This first and second cranial nerve is covered by all 3 meninges. because they are direct prolongation of the forebrain. So they will cover with all three meninges. So the meningioma tumor can give rise to these nerves. Anosmia and agusia. Osmia means smell. Absence of smell or loss of ability of smell perception is called anosmia. Similar word for taste. Geusia, gustatory sensation, that is taste sensation, lost is called ageusia. Loss of smell, anosmia. Loss of taste, ageusia. If there is par word instead of a, parosmia and pargeusia, that means uh, change in the perception or interpretation. There is perverted sensation is called par. So it is called parosmia, altered sense of smell. You will smell different things for different sensation. It is not normal. That is called parosmia. Because olfactory neurons have ability to regenerate when damaged, so they will act as a stem cell, and transplantation of these stem cells is used for treating in spinal cord injury. It is research level surgery. Allergic rhinitis can cause temporary olfactory loss due to inflammation of epithelium. In case of fracture of cribriform plate of ethmoid, there will be CSF leakage through subarachnoid space. It is called CSF rhinorrhea. If it is the petrous temporal bone, it will lose CSF from the middle ear. It is called CSF otorrhea. Fits or epilepsy. Temporal lobe epilepsy is also known as uncinate fits. There is hyper firing of this uncinate neurons. It will result in spasmodic contraction of body parts. It is called epilepsy. So generally it is temporal lobe epilepsy. So you will find that in case of attack of epilepsy, person is given strong smell like onion or shoe or socks or something very terrible smelly substance. So it is stimulating olfactory neurons, and then it will counter stimulate the uncinate fits. So it is used for primary emergency treatment of epilepsy attack. Now we will see facial nerve. All of you have idea about functional components. So you have to revise the functional components first. स्क्रीन बताओ तो भाई. So remember transverse section of the neural tube, that is median sulcus in the center. Then there is from the median sulcus to lateral side, total 7 functional components are there. In between there is sulcus limitans. Sulcus limitans medially there are 3 components, and lateral to sulcus limitans there are 4 components. You can remember this is right half of neural tube. Here there is median sulcus, here there is sulcus limitans. First there is 2 general embryologically, then in later part there is one special between these two general. In between 2 general there is one special added, and most later part, most laterally there is one more special added. So these are the functional components of cranial nerves. Now our facial nerve, vagus nerve, glossopharyngeal nerve, they are having maximum components. So in this diagram you can see facial nerve is covering 5 out of 7 components. So out of these 5, these two are considered together, GVA and SVA, in one single column. So we will have 2 efferents and 2 afferents. Okay, these are the 2 afferents and these are the 2 efferents. 2 motor fibers and 2 sensory fibers. They are combining together in facial nerve. It is nerve of second branchial arch or second pharyngeal arch. Remember, we have 5 pharyngeal arches, number 1, 2, 3, 4 and 6. And the 4 cranial nerves for them, 5, 7, 9, 10. Okay. First arch, fifth nerve, second arch, seventh nerve, third arch, ninth nerve, fourth and sixth arch, together 10th nerve. Again, first pharyngeal arch, mandibular nerve, second pharyngeal arch, facial nerve, third pharyngeal arch, glossopharyngeal nerve, fourth and sixth pharyngeal arch, that is recurrent laryngeal nerve. Okay, branches of vagus. So we have 5, 7, 9, 10 supplying pharyngeal arches. So our muscles, they are derived from second pharyngeal arches, which are supplied by facial nerve. So these 5 functional components, from medial to lateral side, it is SVE, then GVE, GVA, SVA and GSA. Remember, 2 motor and 2 sensory. It is 2 afferents and 2 efferents. So first one is spatial visceral efferent. It is also known as branchiomotor because it is motor to the branchial arches or pharyngeal arches muscle. Okay, so there is a muscles of mastication supplied by mandibular nerve. It is post-rheumatic nerve, and principal supply is facial muscles. Muscles of facial expression, that is spatial visceral efferent. Then we have glands, general visceral efferent and general visceral afferent. Visceral means glands, that is submandibular and sublingual glands. Then nose, palate, pharynx and larynx. Again, which are the glands? Submandibular and sublingual glands, nose, palate, pharynx and larynx. So these are secretomotor or parasympathetic fibers. General visceral efferent carries secretomotor fibers, submandibular, sublingual, nose, palate, pharynx, larynx. So one of them will also go to lacrimal glands. In general, all glands are supplied by facial nerve branches, but the components will be from different nuclei. For we have seen in the pathways of these glands. And afferent fibers or sensory fibers from the same glands, they are general visceral afferent. Okay. And spatial visceral afferent means taste. Spatial sensation we have 4: vision, hearing, taste and smell. So out of that, taste sensations from anterior to third of tongue is carried by facial nerve, that is chorda tympani nerve. It is spatial visceral afferent. General somatic afferent, that is proprioception from the muscles of the face. the proprioceptive fibers from the masticatory muscles and muscles of the face. Uh, you should always remember that all somatic afferents, all general somatic afferents from head and neck, they are ultimately relayed in the trigeminal nucleus. We have seen three parts of trigeminal nucleus from cranial to caudal. They are mesencephalic, chief sensory, and spinal nucleus. So, in the spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve, the proprioceptive sensations will be relayed. So, anywhere from the any nerve, any cranial nerve, when there is proprioceptive fibers carried, ultimately they will reach trigeminal nucleus. So, these are the keywords you can write anywhere. Which are the keywords? Branches of pharyngeal arches, its nerves, then these proprioceptive fibers in trigeminal nucleus, that you can mention anywhere in any nerves if you don't remember anything. So, which are the nuclei? Remember four components. Caudally, this is transverse section of pons. So this border is your pontomedullary junction between pons and medulla. So your facial nerve emerges. This round bundle represents facial nerve. So it is having two efferents. You can see GVE and SVE, two efferents, direction of arrow. Then this is two afferents, GVA, SVA, and GSA. These are the two afferents and these are the two efferents. So we have total four nuclei for these four arrow. Two efferents. Which are the two efferents? Trace the color. You should see the color and font to correlate. This dark blue color is your salivatory and lacrimatory nuclei. Superior salivatory nucleus and lacrimatory nucleus. That is your general visceral efferent component. So, superior salivatory will go to submandibular and sublingual gland, and lacrimatory nucleus will go to the lacrimal gland. One lacrimal via the ciliary ganglion and submandibular via submandibular ganglion. So these two will be your GVE. Another motor, SVE, spatial visceral efferent, that is motor nucleus of facial nerve. It is also known as branchiomotor component. So this will go to the muscles of the face. From the motor nucleus, this yellow one, SVE, spatial visceral efferent or branchiomotor, that will go to the muscles of facial expression. You can see that I have divided this in two parts with this white line, upper half and lower half of motor nucleus of facial nerve. We will remember this half in case of palsy of facial nerve, Bell's palsy, or supranuclear, nuclear and infranuclear palsy. So upper half of this motor nucleus is receiving same sided fibers, same ipsilateral fibers, corticonuclear, and lower half receives contralateral corticonuclear fibers. So lower half receives only contralateral and upper half receives both ipsi and contralateral fibers. Now these two afferents, GVA and SVA, is green. You can see GVA and SVA, that is relayed in visceral afferent, means taste. So that is your gustatory nucleus. that is our NTS. It is U-shaped nucleus, nucleus tractus solitarius. Remember, it is having 9, 10 and 7. NTS 9, 10 and 7 cranial nerve nuclei. Out of them we are discussing 7, that is facial nerve. From anterior to third of tongue, GVA and SVA sensations are carried to gustatory nucleus or nucleus tractus solitarius. This blue part, GSA, that is proprioceptive sensation from facial muscles. It is relayed in sensory component, that is your spinal nucleus of trigeminal nerve. This whole large column is your spinal trigeminal nucleus, dividing in 3 parts: mesencephalic, deep sensory and spinal nucleus. So this general somatic efferent from the facial muscles, efferent fibers, proprioceptive fibers, they are carried to this sensory nucleus. A spinal nucleus will again be dividing in 3 parts. We will see in trigeminal nucleus detail. So repeat: 4 nuclei: superior salivatory, lacrimatory, motor nucleus and gustatory nucleus. These are the motor components, and sensory components we will have this trigeminal nucleus. Also this taste sensation. So 2 afferent and 2 efferents. Now course and relations. This is overall general course about facial nerve. We have seen that in the pontomedullary junction the facial nerve emerge. There is collection of 4 nuclei from here. This motor nucleus or branchiomotor will turn 6th nerve nucleus, that is abducent nucleus. It will turn round the abducent and then it will come out. This turn is known as internal genofacial nerve. And this motor nucleus, when the facial nerve comes out through pontomedullary junction, we are dividing and discussing in 3 parts: first part, second part and third part. So first part, from the junction to this opening, that is internal auditory meatus. It is transmitting 7th and 8th cranial nerve. So first part up to internal auditory meatus. From there is acute turn, that is known as external genu. Here there is geniculate ganglion of facial nerve. So from the geniculate ganglion, second part starts. It is running obliquely, laterally. It is passing through the middle ear cavity. It is turning processus cochleariformis, and from that it will turn vertically downwards in the posterior wall of middle ear cavity, and then it will exit through stylomastoid foramen. Again, first part, from the nuclei of the pons to the pontomedullary junction, it is course in the brainstem. First part begins from the pontomedullary junction to the internal auditory meatus. The second part from the meatus to this stylomastoid foramen. Meatus to the roof of the middle ear, and from there posterior wall of the middle ear to stylomastoid foramen. It is obliquely, vertically downwards, the third part. So branches of the first part, second part and third part we will see in the detail. Now this is your internal auditory meatus. This internal auditory meatus is transmitting 7th and 8th cranial nerve. So our facial nerve is having 2 roots. motor root and sensory root. Sensory root is also known as nervus intermedius. Nervus intermedius is another name of sensory root of facial nerve. These two will join together here and they will combine to form facial nerve. And this eighth cranial nerve, that is vestibulocochlear, it is having two roots, vestibular root and cochlear root. So vestibular will divide in saccular, utricular and ampullary nerves, and cochlear nerve will go to the modulus and it will supply cochlea. So you can see here, this is first part of facial nerve. From here obliquely in the roof of the middle ear cavity, it is transmitted obliquely, laterally, and from there it will go, there is geniculate ganglion of facial nerve, and then it will pass vertically downwards. You can see this is middle ear cavity. We have removed lateral wall, tympanic membrane, and you can see medial wall of the middle ear. Somewhere here, this area represents your internal acoustic meatus. This round, it is showing four different compartments of the internal acoustic meatus. There is horizontal crest and vertical crest of the bone. Vertical crest is also known as Bell's bar. So there are four compartments in the internal auditory meatus: antero-superior, antero-inferior, posterior-superior, posterior-inferior. Okay, you can see this posterior-superior and posterior-inferior is transmitting superior vestibular nerve and inferior vestibular nerve. Okay, then antero-inferior will transmit cochlear nerve. So all these three, posterior-superior and posterior-inferior with vestibular nerve and anterior-inferior with cochlear nerve, that is your eighth cranial nerve. Now remaining part, antero-superior area is transmitting facial nerve. Motor and sensory root both will transmit from antero-superior area of internal acoustic meatus. From here, first part of facial nerve start. This here there is acute turn, that is called geniculate ganglion. From genu, second part will start. It will go obliquely downwards. In vertical part, that is your third part, it will exit through stylomastoid foramen. So here the branches, this is internal acoustic meatus, this is oblique section, so it is anterior, posterior, this is right and left. From the here facial nerve passes, first part, from here genu, then second part, and from here it is vertically downwards, third part. Okay, so it is roof of middle ear cavity called petrous temporal bone. So branches of the first part you will have here. From the genu, it is greater petrosal nerve. To discuss the branches, you should have idea of this course. We will see this diagram about branches in general. So here first part, second part and third part. Okay, so from the first part, this is genu, and from genu there is greater petrosal nerve. It is running through the roof of the middle ear cavity. And one more branch here, that is now to stapedius. It will supply stapedius muscle. And from the second part, there is coda tympani nerve originating. It is running through the medial surface of tympanic membrane between malleus and incus bone. Then it will exit through petrotympanic fissure and then it will join the lingual nerve of the mandibular division. It will join lingual nerve and then it will end in the submandibular ganglion. And from here, the postganglionic fibers of the submandibular ganglion that will go to submandibular glands and sublingual glands. Oh. And from the stylomastoid foramen, here there are three branches: posterior belly of digastric, stylohyoid, and posterior auricular branches that will run in the auricle. And after stylomastoid foramen, there are in the substance of parotid gland, it is temporal terminal branches called 5 branches. You can remember by placing your hand or palm, spread your 5 fingers on the face: temporal, zygomatic, buccal, marginal mandibular, and cervical. So names of the branches: branches and distribution. Within facial canal, there is greater petrosal, now to stapedius, and coda tympani. After exiting through foramen, there is posterior and anterior division. After exit, immediately there are 3 branches on the posterior side: posterior auricular nerve, posterior belly of digastric, and stylohyoid. And in the anterior side, there is in the substance of parotid gland, it is 5 terminal branches, and there is one communicating branches with the cranial and spinal nerves. These communicating branches, they will go to the 5, 7, 9, 10, all other pharyngeal arches and its nerves. This is course of coda tympani now. You can see this is now to stapedius. It is stabilizing the stapes, so it is preventing from the excessive frequency noise. Your coda tympani originates from posterior wall of the middle ear, and it is exiting through petrotympani fissure. Somewhere here there is greater petrosal now from the first part. You have seen in another diagram. So total 3 ganglia we can correlate with the course of facial nerve. First, there is geniculate ganglion. It is part of facial nerve itself in the course. It is sensory ganglion. So there are pseudo unipolar neurons present in this geniculate ganglion. And 2 efferent parasympathetic ganglia, that is submandibular and pterygopalatine. You can see here there is geniculate ganglion, here there is pterygopalatine ganglion, here it is submandibular ganglion. Geniculate ganglion gives greater petrosal nerve. It unites with deep petrosal nerve from the sympathetic plexus around internal carotid artery. That nerve runs in the nerve of pterygoid canal. Then it is relayed in the pterygopalatine ganglion. From here we have 2 destinations. One branch goes to the communicating branch, and it will supply the lacrimal gland via zygomatic nerve. Another branch will go to the nasal glands in the nasal mucosa. And you already know submandibular ganglion. It is carried by fibers of coda tympani. Damage to facial nerve. Clinical anatomy. See, this is internal acoustic meatus. From here first part starts. up to geniculate ganglion. From here second part starts up to stylomastoid foramen. From here third part starts. Okay, so there are 5 different levels: 1 2 3 4 5. Number 1 here, after genu, it is number 1. After stapedial branch, this is stapedial branch, it is number 2. After this there is chorda tympani branch, so it is number 3 and 4. After chorda tympani, number 5, that is after stylomastoid foramen. Again, number 1 after genu, number 2 after stapedial branch, number 3 4 after chorda tympani, number 5 after stylomastoid foramen. So if you cut, there is damage, you can call this a 0. Okay, before 1 it is 0. So if there is lesion proximal to geniculate ganglion, all 1 2 3 4 5 symptoms will be there. 1 is loss of lacrimation, 2 is loss of stapedial reflex, 3 and 4 is loss of taste and saliva, number 5 is loss of facial muscles, facial expression. Loss of facial expression is also known as Bell's palsy. It is most distal level damage to facial nerve. So if there is number 0, that is genu, before genu damage to facial nerve, you will have all 5 symptoms. Then between genu and stapedial branch, there is only loss of lacrimation. Okay, if there is damage to after stapedial branch, there is number 1 and 2 both. If there is damage to this 3 before chorda tympani, there is 3 4 and 5, that is loss of taste loss of taste and loss of saliva. And if there is damage after this foramen, there is loss of facial expression. You can correlate all these levels of injury and symptoms accordingly, and this you will have again in the ENT subject in the first year, all the levels of facial nerve injury. So this is infranuclear injury level, means after this nuclei of the facial nerve, there is these 5 levels of damage. Before nuclei, it is called supranuclear palsy. At the level of nuclei, it is called nuclear palsy. After the level of nuclei, these 5 different level is called infranuclear palsy. So infranuclear palsy, 5 types. Out of these 5 infranuclear level, this 5th one is called Bell's palsy, only loss of facial expression. So we have seen that only this diagram represents 3 different level palsy: supranuclear, that is cerebral cortical level, somewhere here there is pons. Okay, so this is the transverse section of pons. All 4 nuclei of the facial nerves are located in the pons. So 3 different levels: supranuclear, that is cerebral cortical or before that. So we are discussing these levels according to level of nuclei only. These 4 nuclei of the facial nerve, if there is damage to the pons, 4 nuclei, it is called nuclear palsy. If the damage is above this nuclei, it is called supranuclear palsy. If the damage is below this nuclei, that is 1 2 3 4 5, it is called infranuclear palsy. So this diagram discuss only motor nucleus of facial nerve. Remember this. 4 nuclei: superior salivatory, lacrimatory, gustatory, and motor nucleus of facial nerve. So we are discussing this only motor nucleus. So here there is motor nucleus of facial nerve. So upper part of this motor nucleus receives both ipsilateral and contralateral fibers, that is from the same side and from the opposite side. So it is supplying both side of the face, upper and lower half of the face. So in case of infranuclear lesion, this red area represents stylomastoid foramen level number 5. So in case of infranuclear lesion around stylomastoid foramen, there is Bell's palsy. Ipsilateral half of the face, that is same side of the face, upper and lower half is affected because it is supplied by both same side and opposite side cortex. But in case of here supranuclear palsy, that is damage to fibers in the cerebral cortical level, only opposite side lower half is affected because it is exclusively supplied by this lower half of the motor nucleus. Lower half of motor nucleus, here it is exclusively supplying opposite lower half of the face. So contralateral lower half only is affected in case of supranuclear cerebral palsy. In case of infranuclear palsy, both upper and lower half is affected. Crocodile tear syndrome. Proximal to geniculate ganglion number 1 to damage. In case of this type of damage, the regeneration, the nerve axons will sometimes accidentally connect to lacrimal glands. Instead of submandibular and sublingual, they are accidentally connected to lacrimal glands. So there is lacrimation while eating food. Instead of salivation, there is lacrimation. That is called crocodile tear syndrome. In case of Bell's palsy, that is sudden acute paralysis of the facial nerve at level 5, stylomastoid foramen. These are the symptoms. All facial muscle loss. So inability to the wrinkle of the in the forehead, there is loss of this horizontal crease. There is drooping of the upper eyelid due to orbicularis oculi paralysis. There is inability to puff cheeks due to buccinator muscle palsy. Drooping of the mouth due to orbicularis oris. Okay, so this type of combined representation is seen in Bell's palsy. All the facial muscles are dysfunction. In case of infection, it is called Ramsay-Hunt syndrome. Infection of the geniculate ganglion. So level 1 and 2 injury. Okay, there will be level 1, 2 and 3 symptoms. And virus will show vesicles on the auricle via branches of the posterior auricular nerve. In case of facial palsy in the newborn, you cannot differentiate properly because the facial muscle is developing. Myelination of the facial nerve is still in the process. So you can have mixed type of picture in newborn facial nerve palsy. The cause is usually difficult delivery during birth. So loss of buccinator can sometimes problem in suckling of the milk. In the breastfeeding of the baby, there is problems due to buccinator palsy. So that's all.